So your parents met in Hammond?
They were both from Hammond. They met on like a dance boat or something. It was a boat that would go out at night and they'd have dances. And they met on this boat. Well, my mom and dad lived there for a little while, I think, and then they moved to St. Paul. And he had a job driving a truck. And then he moved to Belle Plaine, I think, during the Depression. And my uncle, Fred Pite, her husband, gave my dad a job at his garage. He sold Chevrolets and Buicks and repaired. But my Uncle Fred was one hell of a guy. He gave my father a job when there weren't any jobs. You know, we were like really poor. Well, I don't know exactly what he did there, but he worked there. He just kind of made up a job for him, I'm sure, because it was his wife's brother. 4 kids, and my mother told me that at one time my father only made $10 a week for 4 kids. How the hell do you do that? And people would give them clothes, and people did that during the Depression. They gave each other food and clothes, whatever they could do to help their friends and relatives keep alive. Then, when the Depression was over and things got a little better, my dad found work at the Green Giant Company. So we moved to Le Sueur, which was 15 miles away from Belle Plaine. He was what they called a comptroller. Comptroller? He bought and sold machinery and parts for machinery for the factories. And he sometimes had to travel to the different plants. Sometimes he even would travel to New York State to buy machinery and do the negotiating for it. And in the later years, he would take my mother with him. They would make a little trip whenever he had to travel.
And they drive?
Yeah. He drove cross country and make a little trip out of it. But see, there were other plants beside the one at Le Sueur. I think there was one in Montgomery, other towns, maybe even in Wisconsin. And so they needed a lot of machinery because they had a lot of factories. He was always really good with math. I think that's how he got the job. You could throw something at him and he would just know the answer, like, what's 47 times 157 or something? And he'd have the answer. Yeah, okay. He wouldn't even have to write it down. It would just be in his head. He was really good at math. And I think maybe that's how he ended up getting that job, because he had constantly working with numbers and prices and purchasing. That was the department he worked for.
The purchasing department.
Yeah. And I can still see his nice little neat numbers right in that book and all those little teeny boxes. And he liked to, every once in a while, a group of them would get together and go to a football game, a really good football game like in Minneapolis or somewhere. And they'd go out to a big steakhouse and have drinks and steaks. You know, just be men, just a group of men. And when he loved to play poker. In fact, he used to have a group, there was a group, they would go to somebody's house every week or every other week, I forget how often. And you could hear them laughing and talking and having the best time. You could hear the chips, you know, throwing the chips, how they click together, and bidding. They had, in our old house on 4th Street, there was a register in the floor of my brother's bedroom. You know those open, where you can look right down into the room?
Yeah.
And Colleen and I used to love to look down there while they were playing poker and laughing and having their drinks and everything. He loved to walk. Loved to walk. He would go for long walks after supper. A lot of times he'd take me with him when I was older and I was the only one around. No, we would just walk in the upper part of town. I can remember he would take the longest strides. I'd almost have to take 2 steps to every one of his because he had those long legs. Some of my old friends, when I go back and visit, when we talk about my dad, they'll say, your dad was the most handsome man that ever lived in the sewer. And he really was handsome. There was no getting around it. My mother used to tease him about, the girls in the office flirting with him and everything. Sometimes she'd get a little jealous. And he had a lot of friends. He had a lot of friends. He just was the kind of guy that was like a magnet. Everybody loved Bob Casey.